Double Nembhard. Shot clock at 10. Lillard. Yes! This is a masterclass from Damian Lillard.
What is up, Pacers Nation? You are listening to the Pacers Post Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan. Well, that was an embarrassment. Pacers fall to the Bucks on Sunday in Game 1, trailing by as many as 30 points. Damian Lillard in his bag in the first half. My goodness. The Pacers just looked out of sorts. Beauty is we've got a game on Tuesday. What adjustments might we see? A little bit more from Tyrese Halliburton. We're breaking it all down right here on the Pacers Post Up. All right, Pacers fans, we are back for yet another episode of the Pacers Post Up. Round 1 loss in Milwaukee. I don't even know where to start. It was a whirlwind of emotions last night, and I think the nature of the NBA today, Ryan, with the play-in tournament, which I think is great. I love the play-in. I think it's another. I guess you got to give another tip of the cap to Adam Silver and the NBA brass, if you will, because it creates some more meaningful games and people tune in, and not that we had a ton of close contests, but that's all well and good. But what it creates is a week off. So we were essentially a week without Pacers basketball. A lot of anticipation, a lot of build up, both in terms of the local media, national media. As things, and we kind of talked about this last week, but as things were building into Sunday, a lot of the pundits, if you will, the talking head experts were on the Pacers. Vegas was on the Pacers, and rightfully so. But we just got punched in the mouth, and it was really hard to kind of see it unravel. I think we got to start with initial reactions just from what you saw as a whole. Obviously, it got out of hand early, which made it, a little bit of a different watch. You're kind of just waiting for the inevitable, but it was a tough evening. Not what we wanted to see. There's a lot of things that we can point to, and Carlisle didn't want to make excuses, and I don't either. But we're going to talk about all that. So Sunday, where was your head at? We watched the first half together and then kind of went our separate ways. But what were you feeling? What'd you see? Where are you at from a gut reaction standpoint?
I will say it was a tough watch. It was probably the most frustrated I've been watching a Pacers game in quite some time. Yeah. Just the emotions of it. Like you said, we were together, and I mean, I was up walking around, wanted to throw my hand through the wall. It was really just a frustrating game, and kind of where you hinted at, we were kind of there. We started off, it seemed like the nerves were there. The Nesmith early jumped and came down and traveled on the first or second possession. And what we kind of saw early on was we were doing a lot of things out of our character of our team, which added to the frustration. I think it was 19-20. And then they went on that huge run, basically getting up to a 30-point lead. We watched the second half separate, but the first half, it was over, is what we were saying.
Yeah, it really felt like it was. I forget, it was the 2-minute mark, 3-minute mark, something like that. Don't quote me, in the second quarter where they eclipsed. It was 35-65. And it was also 37-67. So they reached a 30-point lead twice, and that was the highest lead of the game. And it felt every bit of 30 points. At one point, you looked at me, and we kept kind of we were with family, and we were kind of saying, can we get this to single digits? Can we get it? Because this was right when it was teetering at 16, 18. It's like, we need to go on that run. And you looked at me and said, I feel like it's more likely we're down 25 than we're down 8 or 9. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. We had no real answer for Dame, obviously. Mm-hmm. Listen, I don't necessarily blame that all on Nembhard.
No.
Dame was going off. I felt like, I guess we'll start here, because this was a lot of the talk. There's kind of two storylines that I want to get your thoughts on. A lot of the talk was about Tyrese Halliburton's shot numbers, his passiveness, offense, and Carlisle really tried to downplay that in the postgame. We're not worried about shots. It's not about scoring. It's, and they're doing a lot of things to take the ball out of Tyrese's hands. And my reaction to that is, what were we doing to get the ball out of Lillard's hands? Because I'm not sure I saw that in the first half. We did. Now, he didn't score in the second half. He didn't need to. But I'm curious what you thought about our coverage on him early, our inability to stymie the run. Did you see it as more of a we were out of sync and couldn't get a bucket, or we were way too late to change a coverage, bring a double team, force the ball out of Dame's hands? How did you see that kind of unfold?
There were some major coverage issues in the game. There were a few possessions where the switch communication was off, and we left Dame open while he was rolling.
Doug McDermott had a really bad one.
Where he just hits a step back, and now he's wide open. There's no communication. Why Doug is in the game, maybe we can touch on a little bit after. Yeah. I didn't think Nembhard's on-ball defense, although there were a few possessions where he was kind of isolated. And we love when Nembhard gets physical and up, but Dame was just beating him with his step without even a pick and roll option. It was just one dribble, and all of a sudden he's got him on his heel, and then he's going to the lane, and Dame isn't the athlete he used to be, but still was crafty around the rim. Now, he had some wild shots that you just have to hope don't always go in. He had his step back. He was pulling out Dame time. Although there's also some things like late in that first quarter, he's going to the step back.
Yeah,
that's his
100%.
shot. We've seen it in the playoffs. He did it to PG. He did it to the Rockets. And even then I was like, he's going to do it. I'm screaming it as it's happening.
Yeah.
He gets it. And I know it's so much easier to sit here and say, get a hand in the face, but Nembhard needs to be up. He's not going to be proud of that performance. But I definitely don't see why when he had 19 in the first quarter, I think.
Yeah.
How are you not thinking double team or bringing action, especially when they don't have Giannis? There aren't a ton of options. Now, Middleton had it going. Portis kind of got it going later in the second half. But it was clear that he was rising up and he was taking over the game.
Yeah, and it came out after the game that last week, Doc made it a point in practice that they were practicing running screens for Dame, that he was going to be the focal point, and they were going to make sure that he applied pressure on the offensive end. And frankly, I'm not a Doc Rivers fan, but you can't say that we weren't out-coached that game. I mean, from a preparation, X's and O's, they made all the right moves coming into that, and I thought it was extremely evident. You touched on it, and we're kind of ping-ponging around here. We're going to probably do that most of this episode because it's really just more about gut reaction and what we saw on Sunday. But I was shocked how quickly we appeared to be scrambling from a lineup perspective. We played 11 guys in a playoff game, and I know that we have had the best bench in the league all year. We've been able to throw different guys, but the reality is Milwaukee wasn't doing that, and our guys were not effective. I mean, we saw that we mentioned it already. The defensive play from Doug. We saw Ben Shepherd take a mid-range pull-up jumper early in the game, stepped out of bounds twice. Jalen Smith put the ball on the floor and drove the top of the key left-handed to try. I mean,
TJ took one of his jumpers, but it was clearly 3 feet beyond the spot he would typically take it from.
Is it, Ryan, is it just jitters? Or was the moment, it looked like maybe the moment was too big?
Absolutely in the first half. It seemed, and that's where we kept saying we were very uncharacteristic to what we typically did in terms of just how our offense looked. It didn't look like Tyrese was going or facilitating like he usually does. Players were doing things they don't typically do. And that's why we went on such a cold stretch, because the defense wasn't great, specifically on Dame, but 109 points, if we were to sit here before and say we held Milwaukee to 109, I'd feel pretty good about our odds to win that game. But
for sure.
That second quarter offense, and really just first half, I think we had 21 points in the first quarter and second quarter, but it was just, and part of that is we did have good looks from deep, and they weren't falling. 0 of 14 to start the game. You can't expect that to continue.
No, you can't. You can't expect it, and if it does, then this is going to be a quick series, because I guess the challenge for me and why I was asking about moment and jitters and all that, they weren't bad looks, a lot of them. We were throwing shit off the backboard.
Oh.
I mean, how many guys threw it over the rim, didn't even have a chance? I mean, it was, even and I know this was in the second half, I believe, even the TJ second attempt on the three where Halliburton's just standing there on the wing wide open. And it's like, we just never felt like we were, the ball was not live. It wasn't, flying around. We weren't getting into sync. And I do think we have to talk about Tyrese. I know, and I've tried on this podcast and just in general to give him the benefit of the doubt from a injury, getting synced up with Siakam, the pressure, all the different things that we've talked about over the course of the last, season, essentially. I need to see more. That's a game where you can't, in my opinion, particularly with Dame doing everything that he was. There was a point in the fourth quarter with under 4 minutes left, and I tweeted this out. Ben Shepherd and Tyrese Halliburton had the same number of shot attempts. I just don't think that and again, Carlisle said it in the post game, it's about process and we don't need him to score. It's about what he does for our offense. Well, the offense wasn't working. So what we needed him to do was be more assertive. And he just didn't seem like he wanted to do it. And I don't know if you felt the same way, but that to me is a cause for at least, it's probably the most concerning thing I saw on Sunday.
Yeah, Tyrese, when the offense is rolling and he's distributing and everybody's hitting shots, I give him a pass on some of those games because he doesn't have to shoot in those.
Yeah.
But it's clear when we hit these lulls and we don't know where to go, he needs to elevate his game. I said this on the last podcast. I think if we're going to win this series, assuming Giannis comes back at some point, Tyrese has to be the second best player in the series.
Yeah.
Giannis will be one, but he has to outplay Dame. They can't have the two best players in the series. And obviously watching last night, clearly Dame was the better player. He had the hot hand, so hopefully he cools off a little bit like the second half.
I don't think it's sustainable.
Yeah.
I don't.
And he looked gassed at the end of the game.
For sure. I don't think it's sustainable. And yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but it just... I'm with you. He's got to...
He took 4 meaningful shots. I think he finished at 7 shots in the game,
yeah.
But by that time it was over, fourth quarter. 4 shots for Tyrese. He knows it, and I told you this. I thought he would know the moment and come out extra aggressive, and I was just surprised to see. I mean, if you had not watched the Pacers all this year, he wouldn't even have stood out on the court at all.
Because he's a liability on the defensive end. And we saw that a little bit, but that really, he was not the problem on that end of the floor. It was containing Dame and finding out, figuring out how to get the ball out of his hands. Essentially, we couldn't do it. But no, he did not look like he was the quote unquote best player on the team, which obviously the only bright spot of the game, and we haven't even mentioned his name yet, was Pascal Siakam. And he was frankly the only guy on the roster who I didn't feel like had jitters or,
he was playing his game. And obviously he's got the most playoff experience, finals experience, etc. And he clearly wasn't rushed, wasn't moving. He was getting to his elbows, jumpers. That was really the only thing saving our offense for a while. We probably would have only had...
Could have been down 40.
Yeah. So I'm with you there. He played well, and they switched him on to Middleton and tried to mix up his defensive coverage. But I expect him to continue to do this. He'll probably lead our team in scoring throughout this playoff run. But Tyrese has to find a way. And you saw a few where he's got to get by people. He relies on his step back a lot, and if that's going, that's great. But it was... When he was in that slump, we talked about that Pistons game where he came out and he was just attacking the rim over and over again. And that's how the offense gets going. And then if they collapse, hopefully we hit some shots. Maybe that is the jitters. I mean, Miles had a couple bad brick backboards. Same with Neesmith, Obi. Yeah. Everybody did.
Everybody looked out of sorts. And I think bringing up that Pistons game is extremely... That's well said, because it is what we're going to need. As much as Tyrese is the engine that runs the offense, part of what makes great players great is that they command so much. So if you can apply a little pressure, particularly driving and getting to the rim, and you start to get some baskets, and maybe they have to change their coverage. Now it opens everything up. Now we're not scrambling late shot clock and seeing all these, what you said, out of character plays. And that's really what happened, I think, underlining the whole game on Sunday is we just didn't play Pacers basketball. And you mentioned this, so for fans that hadn't watched or hadn't tuned in all year, that was not what we've seen throughout the course of this season. So I guess, listen, the takeaway here, if you're a player, and I don't know how easy or difficult this is to do, but you just got to race this one. There's not a lot that I think you take away. I mean, I guess
there's more to take away defensively, I think, on how you want to match up, play Dame, especially before Giannis comes back. Who's going to guard Middleton? Who's going to guard Portis? Because Nesmith was a little short for Middleton's pull-up jumpers, and so they threw Siakam, although it didn't really cool him off at all. And that's where it comes a lot to coaching, where you said Doc clearly outcoached him, where I thought coming into the series we would have that advantage there. And it was clear that Carlisle was reacting, changing subs, putting in Jackson when he started with Jalen.
For sure.
Bringing in Doug, who I don't know why I knew we needed points in a run, so maybe that was the one argument, but he had the worst plus minus of anyone on the team and the lowest minutes, if that tells you anything about why, or at least the lowest minutes of anybody who played both halves. But I'm sure he'll figure it out. The coaching staff will get working, but it was just, offensively, it was really tough to watch.
Well, I guess let me put it to you. Let me ask you this: does Doug play in game 2? Do we go 11 deep? I mean,
you can't. I think the way they wanted to start was 9 deep. We saw that with what we kind of even predicted. It was going to be T.J. Shepard, Obi, and Jalen. Yeah, which I still think Jalen was rough. He was grabbing boards, but outside of that, so they tried to mix match because Jalen was struggling on Portis, and they wanted to bring in Jackson on Portis, who might be a better matchup. But that's the reacting. All of a sudden, we're bringing in Jackson, who probably isn't in the game plan at all going into the game.
I did not expect him to play.
No.
I never thought we'd see Jackson on the floor. And so, you hit it. It was a lot of reactionary stuff. It felt like we were grasping at straws, and that was so early in the game. I think Carlisle has to be careful of what message does that send to the team type of thing. And we'll find out. I mean, we've said it all series, or I shouldn't say all series, all season. The playoffs come down to matchups and coaching. And Carlisle's going to have to earn his keep here going into the second game, because I think you've got to shore up something from a matchup perspective. I think you have to consider throwing different looks at Dame. And we saw some of that. I think we won the third quarter 29-14.
18. You're right.
It was It was the lowest points we've allowed all season. Now, granted, we had a 7-point lead at half or something like that. It could have been. It was somewhere around there. But I think we've got to figure out if Dame starts cooking or Chris Middleton or what. We've got to have those things that we can start to go to right away, mixing up the coverage a little bit. I am not a fan of, okay, Dame had a great game, let's pull Nembhard and put Nesmith on him because he's got more length or whatever. I heard some people talking about that, podcast, local radio. Dame was just going off. I don't think if Nesmith's on him that we have a markedly different outcome.
Not with how we were guarding. And he hit probably 6 step-back threes, which is
from 30 feet.
And that is his game, so you have to play it. One of my favorite quotes was back when he hit that shot over Paul George. Paul George likes to always retract his words and say, that's a bad shot. But for him, it's not when he's playing the way he does. Yeah. So you have to be prepared for it, specifically without Giannis, I think, because he's the only guy who can really do that. Chris Middleton can elevate his game, but he can't. I don't think at this stage he can take over like Dame did.
No, there's not a lot of players that can.
Yeah.
That was a special performance. It was tough to watch as a Pacers fan, but you got to give him credit. I mean, we are a long way removed from the Tyrese Halliburton Dame Time celebration at the in-season tournament. So I guess from a mentality perspective, Ryan, we've got a young team, a lot of guys that really haven't been there. I mean, I know we talk about TJ and Miles and Nesmith have been in the playoffs. We went over our playoff record the last episode. These guys have not played any real meaningful playoffs.
Tyrese hasn't played any playoffs. Nembhard hasn't. Nesmith was with the Celtics, but never in their rotation for it. Obviously, Siakam, Turner, kind of. TJ's last playoffs, I was telling you, against the Heat in the bubble, he was virtually unplayable. His stat line was 2-2-2 per game in about 10 minutes a game. And that's because things speed up, more size. That's not now. TJ needs to play, and he got a little bit more going in the second half. But yeah, where's your head at? I guess moving forward for Game 2. I mean, I'm in the boat where I'll take this game, put it away, regroup, get the jitters out.
Yeah,
there's no reason not to think we still can't take this series. But it was a hit.
Yeah, I think if you're that coaching staff or a player in that locker room, you have to do everything you can to say, okay, it's one game. It was probably our worst game of the season.
Offensively, 100%.
Yeah, it was not great, and I will give our team credit in the sense that we, I think back to the Dennis Green quote: "We are who we thought they are, who we thought they were," and the Pacers kind of are who we thought they were in the sense that we've seen them do this. We've seen them lay eggs inexplicably and then bounce back and have phenomenal games. And so I guess I'm holding my hat on that. And if I'm in the locker room or a coach on that coaching staff, I'm saying we've been here before. We've had putrid outings. We've bounced back and won big games. And there's no reason, particularly if Giannis is not playing, why we can't beat this team. They got a lot of momentum. Their confidence has to be high right now. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we had an opportunity in Game 1 squandered to kind of kill the when we talked about it. Momentum. They're 17-19 with Doc, 3-7 in their last 10. It's why all the national media was on the Pacers. That's out the window. Yep. We had the worst performance of anybody in the first round. Period. So now you've got to regroup. I think Rick has got to figure out going into this how he's going to shorten that rotation and whether that's guys playing more minutes or what have you. There's I am not a fan of the all bench lineup. I don't think that we can see that again. Period. Milwaukee didn't do it at all. And it's kind of like playoff basketball 101 is there is not time, as good as our bench has been. And I get it. We're number one in the league. It's still bench players. It's still Doug McDermott and Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith, rookie Ben Shepherd stepping out of bounds. I want to see Siakam on the floor. You've got to figure out that rotation with him and Halliburton to keep them, or Miles. Just you've got to shore that up. And even if it's going bad, and I get it, it's a game of runs. I don't like the knee-jerk reaction of throwing a Doug in because, oh my God, he could hit a three.
Yeah.
I just don't like that.
And Doug, I'm with you on the all bench lineups. Nate McMillan was guilty of that a lot with our teams, especially in the playoffs. And that's when the game really started to kind of pull, is when we went to the bench and then started that second quarter on that run. The one thing I do hope for optimism, at least in the next game, and this goes back to even with Tyrese when he was in that slump, I hope we can hit a few early threes.
Yeah.
Just to get, because I think that calms you down. All of a sudden, you brick one bad, you airball one, and then it tightens up, and you're starting to do things you wouldn't do. Maybe you drive. We saw even a few team players pass up shots they should take, and so I hope we can get a few early ones to drop just to settle the nerves, because my fear is this happens again.
Yeah, well, and that's part of having a young team in the playoffs. And it's why we've talked about so much over the last couple of years, the importance of getting back to these types of games so that it's not a foreign feeling. And I don't know if one game makes it less foreign, right? That the pressure is ratcheted up. You're down 0-1. So, it's kind of the put up or shut up time. And I hope that we've talked about it all year. I hope we can lean into in-season tournament experience that they've continually talked about. The Miami Heat game that was a playoff-type atmosphere that we needed to win. Cleveland, the control your destiny Atlanta game. I mean, we've had some moments, but you could tell from the jump, literally, that building in Milwaukee was raucous. The fans were there. They, I'm sure, heard all the national media and Bucks are done and this, that, and the other. Dame's upset, blah, blah, blah. And they played like the veteran team that's won a championship, and we played like an upstart, young group. And I'm not ready to throw in the towel. I'm sure you're not either. I think I think if you can get a win on Tuesday night, everything changed. I mean,
that's where if you're 1-1, you've got home court advantage. Let's say we can come out. It's the reverse of this game. We are hot from deep. Everybody's hitting. We're up 10, 15 in the first half, control the game. All of a sudden, the narrative's flipped again back to us, where the national media is on us. We're confident. And I would be, because it's what you said. We are an up and down team. So it's not too, you don't want to get too low on one loss, specifically where nothing was falling for anybody.
Yeah.
So if you can get a little rhythm, then bring it back into Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And again, we'll see on Giannis's timetable. I would still be pretty shocked if he played Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think his first chance will be Friday. But even then, I say we probably have 2 or 3 more games without him, just kind of reading the tea leaves as best you can. So there's reasons, obviously, to keep, I'm the type of person, like today I media blackout. I just can't hear it. It drives me nuts.
Oh, yeah.
And not in a bad way. We deserve all the talking heads to say the negative things because we play that way.
Yeah.
It's not my style because it drives me nuts. But I want to be optimistic. We need to, and we said this about the game, we need to start strong.
Yeah. It's been our bugaboo all year. The slow starts have plagued this team. And I think some of it is, I think our pace works against us in some aspects, because when you're not hitting shots and you're creating that many opportunities on long rebounds for the other team to get out in transition, it's kind of a catch-22. It can come back to bite you, and that's what we saw. And it was the second unit. I mean, we were at one point, it was 19-20, and then they just exploded. It was, Dame had 29 points at the same time we had 29 points in the game. So it got away from us, but it is one game, and we're going to, obviously I'll be tuning in on Tuesday night, and hopefully we see a bounce back. There's games all tonight, so we'll kind of get to see some updates on that. And if you do get the series tied to 1-1, coming back to Indy,
that was the goal.
It's the goal. That's exactly what you wanted, and you have to put this in the rear view. But the only way to do it is go out and play. I need to see more from Tyrese. I just feel
I would be shocked if he didn't come out ultra aggressive.
Yeah.
If he is timid like he was tonight, then that's when you start hitting the panic button, because it's like we said, he has to be the guy if we have any chance in this series.
And I hope again, we talked about this on the Halliburton episode when he was really at the peak of his slump after that, what was it, Cleveland game, 1 of 9 from deep or something. I said this then, and I'll say it now. As a coaching staff, you have to do things to get that guy going. And I know we play random and free, and we don't run a lot of sets and things, but I think it's important to get off to a strong start, get Halliburton some easy buckets or looks or setups or what have you. Same thing with Siakam. So that way, hopefully, you need your stars to calm everybody else down. It's like, okay, when Ben Shepherd gets that ball or Neesmith in the corner, they don't feel the weight of the world like, oh shit, I need to make this because we're really on the ropes. And we just saw that in gloriously awful fashion on Sunday afternoon. So we'll kind of leave it there, I think, and we're going to do another reaction after Tuesday. I hope we're talking, Pacers 1-1 coming back to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It'll be very interesting to see the coaching adjustments and things like that. I'm still with you. I still like having Carlisle over Rivers.
Game 1 went to Doc.
Game 1 went to Doc. That's a great way of putting it. And the Bucks came out and played well. You can't take anything away from them, but now it's our time to respond. So we'll be coming at you again after Tuesday's game. And hopefully, like I said, we're looking at a Pacers win, and we can come back to Gainbridge with home court advantage.